Reading with your kids.
Hey, so great to see you. Come on in. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast, an iHeartRadio Best Kids and Family Podcast Award nominee. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. I am sincerely delighted that you are part of our beautiful Reading with Your Kids family, and I do look at this thing that we created with all of our listeners from all around the world, with all of the guests that we've had come in, with all of the supporters that we've had. I do look at you all as family. And that's why I'm so excited that you're joining us here today, because I believe that when we come together as family, we can build a more just and equitable and fair world. And that's something that we want for all of our kids. I'm really excited to welcome back to the show one of our dear friends, one of our favorite guests, Dr. Terance Shipman. Joining us on the line right now from Atlanta in Georgia. He's been on the show a whole lot. He is a multiple Reading with Your Kids certified great read author, the author of the Kindergarten Chronicles series. Please welcome back to the show, Dr. Terance Shipman. Terance, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you this morning?
I'm wonderful, and I'm really thankful that you're joining us this morning. Typically, when Dr. Terance is on the show, we're celebrating a new addition to his wonderful Kindergarten Chronicles series. But I asked Dr. Shipman on today because of all the turmoil that's been going on around, well, not only around the United States, but around the world. Folks coming together, rallying, protesting for justice and peace for all people. The catalyst, of course, was the murder of George Floyd in Minnesota by a police officer while three of his colleagues looked on. And initially, right after that happened, some folks reached out to me and said, you should have a panel. And I thought about it, and I think one-time panels are wonderful, but this is a pretty important issue. And so what I'd rather do, and what I talked to Dr. Shipman about, was to have ongoing conversations with different authors about how we can, as parents, as the first and most important teachers of our kids, how we can teach our kids to be just with everybody, to look at everybody as our brothers and sisters, and especially how we can use Kidlit to hopefully create a more just and equal world. So I know that's a lot for us to tackle here today, but I'm really happy that you're on, because you've been right in the thick of this. You have been educating kids for a long time.
Yes.
So what are your let me just throw it open to you. What are your thoughts? What's the first thing we can do as parents to kind of move this ball forward?
I think one of the first things is to just sit down and talk with them. Mm-hmm. And you have to look at each other as human beings. Mm-hmm. We all, I think, as a teacher, more so even as a parent, I sat down and I talked with everybody and let them know we're the same. We're different, have different skin colors, different way we go at home. But the bottom line is we're all human beings. And if you just treat each other like that, it could be the world a better place. And it has worked. I think my children personally, have been exposed to all different kind of cultures and people. Mm-hmm. We go to a multiracial church, mm-hmm. Oakhurst Presbyterian, where we all just come together as one. You know, we're children of God. We don't see each other too much. Those differences and things that's going on in the world. You kind of know it, but you don't discriminate or dislike somebody because they are different. I think that's one of the first things I try to teach as a parent and as a teacher. Mm-hmm.
I think, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think that is so important. And it seems so simple, but I think it's something that sometimes we forget, that we forget to do as parents, to sit down and to give that message constantly with our kids. And it's just not it's not one of those things where you sit down and you have one conversation. It's something ongoing that we need to do. And I love the fact that you mentioned that not only do you talk to your kids about it, but you practice it. And one of the ways you practice it is by being part of a multiracial, multicultural community at your church.
Mm-hmm. And I think as a teacher, something that I've always done since my first year. I think you and I have talked about this before. I have a globe in my room. My first year teaching, they gave me all brand new equipment, and I received a globe. Many people don't use globes anymore. And on this globe, every time I get a child from a different country, I circle that country. Or if they're parents from a different country, I circle that country so that we know, hey, everybody, people who's been in the same class with you at some point would come from different parts of the world. And I think now on that globe, I have over 20 countries. And even last year, I think I had to circle one. I had a little girl came from Guatemala. Mm-hmm. So that was the first time. And she couldn't speak a lick of English. But I put her next to one of my fluent Spanish-speaking children, and it worked out perfect. She was so excited just about being in class that somebody cared about her. Mm-hmm. I think in the other classes, the teachers might just to push her to the side. But in my class, she felt good. I'm coming in here. I can do something. I'm a part of this class. And that has always been my theme is once you cross the threshold of my door, you're in a safety place. Mm-hmm. That when you come in here, we don't call names. You're a part of a bigger picture in here. I want you to learn. And all I ask you to do is try. And I think that's worked over the last 26 years.
Absolutely. And one of the testaments to that success is the fact that so many of your students that you've had over those past 26 years have become part of Team Shipman. And they're a very vital part of helping you put together the Kindergarten Chronicles. It's really unusual, especially for teachers who teach in the lower grades, to continue that connection with their kids. It's obvious that you've made a huge difference in their lives.
Yeah. Recently, I got some sad news from one of my former parents. She saw one of my book ads on Facebook, and she was like, I believe that was my son's teacher. And I commented back, and I said, yeah, this is your son's teacher. And she messaged me a few days later and told me her son had passed 5 years ago. And I didn't ask why, mm-hmm. but she was like, I thank you because you made such an impact on his life. He only lived to the age of 20, but I was just glad that you were there. Mm-hmm. And I later asked I went and asked another former student what happened. He committed suicide. And so it's just, you have your ups and downs in this journey of Team Shipman.
Yeah, so sad. So very, very sad. One of the things, you as an educator, you really stand out. And, we've talked a lot on your past appearances about education, and I think that's, one of the ways that we're going to tackle this issue is through education. Why do you think that you are so unique? Why, from my way of thinking, every classroom should be like your classroom. Every kid should feel safe and protected and feel like family in a classroom. But unfortunately, I think that your class is the exception.
I think observing over the years, some teachers just teach by the standards, and we all have to teach the standards mm-hmm. and the targets and make sure we cover everything. If an administrator walks in our room, make sure everything is covered. But I think sometimes you have to take a minute and just say, like, one of the things I do as soon as I start class, I stand in front of my class. And most administrators don't agree with that, but I do it. And I just, especially on Monday morning, I look at my students and say, well, sit up tall, sit like professional students. Let me take a look at you. I want to make sure they're okay. Mm-hmm. And then every Friday I do the same thing, but I look at them and I say, well, I'll need you to go home and just have a safe weekend. And it just shows that you're human, that you care about them. Mm-hmm. You have to, if I consider myself to be a child of God, my ministry might be just education, mm-hmm. reaching those students. One of my favorite people, my wife and I was talking about this the other day, was Fred Rogers, mm-hmm. Mr. Rogers. Mm-hmm. And I looked at a documentary about him, and he actually was a priest. Then then he stopped. Mm-hmm. And I told my wife, I said, what he did was totally unique. He didn't directly preach the word of God to people. He just took it through education. Mm-hmm. And he reached millions of people that way. But his spirit transcends, and you reach through the TV and you can feel that he was a person that cared about really what he did. And I try to, in many ways, be that way, but also be my own person. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's so important that, and especially with kids, if we are sitting at home and our words are saying to kids, everybody is human, we need to treat everybody justly, but then our kids watch us and our behaviors aren't backing up our actions, then that's a real problem. And kids pick up on that really, really quickly.
Yes, they do. I think my wife and I guess during this whole COVID, because we've been together a lot, mm-hmm. We go out and we observe it on people's behaviors. How some people wear masks, some people don't. How you're seeing the violence in the route when, and it's okay to protest. Mm-hmm. But I don't know, I'm not really pro tear up your neighborhoods or tear mm-hmm. something up. But mm-hmm. if you want a peaceful protest, but have a purpose too. Okay, what's the end game? Mm-hmm. What are you trying to get at the end? So we've been watching all this, and we observed that, you know what, we taught some students right there. That one standing on that car, we taught him. Mm-hmm. And we noticed that a lot of the behaviors, the way kids act in school, they just imitate their parents. Yeah. And if you're not showing certain behaviors at home, it comes into the school building. Mm-hmm. So, and we think with doing this whole thing, we've been trying to say, well, how can we change it as educators? One of my great doctor friends, Dr. Shura Anderson, one of the things she's always told me is, you have to realize all kids are not raised right at home. Mm. So right at the beginning of the year, you have to teach them behavior. You really have to take the first 2 months and teach them the behavior that you want the rest of the year, because you got 8 more months with them. Mm-hmm. If you don't put in that time and teach them how you want them to behave, your school year is going to be lost. And I think that's pretty much, I agree with it 100%, even in society. If we don't start teaching the kids, it's okay to protest, but what are you protesting for? And they'll tell you all these reasons. Okay, but do you know how to make that change? Mm-hmm. No, we're just going to keep marching. Well, okay, but you didn't study Dr. King. Before they protest, they had a meeting. Okay, what's our agenda? We want to change voting rights. So let's protest until they give us a meeting and sit down at the table and talk about voting rights. Mm-hmm. And once and then if they don't agree to it, we keep protesting. I see people now protesting, and okay, what is your end game? What do you want? So that's the kind of, I think, we have to come to some conclusion is, what do we want? Mm-hmm. What are we trying to change? And who are your leaders? Mm-hmm. And you go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that's really important. And one of the things that I've done with you, and it's a little unfair, but you've always been able to really take it. If you were out there protesting and because the world's not fair, what would you do if you were the leaders of the protest? What would you set as this is what we want to change. This is how we want things to change.
I think one of the main things that have to be changed is there had to be higher standard for policemen. Mm-hmm. We looked at it was a job in the application shot out for policemen in a local county here. And like the minimum, policemen can have a GED or 2 years of college, be the age of 20. And we looked at our sons and was like, you could be a policeman. And we were like, I don't want our sons to be policemen right now.
A terrifying thought.
Yeah. And so I think that teachers, doctors, lawyers, everybody else is held to such a high standard. But policemen, you can have a GED, you carry a badge, and you carry a gun. Mm-hmm. You carry a lot of power when you walk around. But we're not putting a quality enough people behind that badge. Do they know how to handle situations? You have to be trained, mm-hmm. not just a few months of training, mm-hmm. but it's so much education. Sitting down and letting somebody teach you how to be a police officer could make such a difference. Yeah.
Absolutely. One of the things I was talking to my daughter about last night is I actually worked as a police intern and when I was in college and didn't carry a gun, but it was summertime and they put on these young people to patrol the different playgrounds and whatnot at night. We had full police powers, and we had a day of training. So I think you're right. I definitely know that I didn't have the training that I needed back then, and thankfully there was no issues, and it was a fairly quiet experience for me. But also one of the things that, and I shared this with her last night, I had considered law enforcement as in high school with a number of different things. But that experience working with the police department, and I love the people that I work with, but very quickly in just 2 months' time, I started to notice that the police looked at the world in a way that made me very uncomfortable. They looked at people as belonging to one of three groups. You're either a police officer, you were a citizen, or you were a perp. And mm-hmm. that is one of the reasons that I decided that this wasn't for me, was because I didn't want to look at the world that way.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah. And actually teaching is similar. Mm. You look at students as those, the high level, the mid level students, and the low. But a lot of teachers will approach it that way. But my thing is you know the different levels of students, but you have to be able to adjust. Mm-hmm. And I just want to see that a student has growth and make that year that I have, that 10 months, one of the best educational experiences that they had. And I think you have to always shoot for that. A lot of things can happen in a school year. A lot of things can happen in a school day. But you always have to come back with that energy. I have to try to make this the best educational experience possible for these students. Mm-hmm. One of the things, my sons and I, we have like a family meeting, and it's just us talking. And we had voting here lately, and like a week ago here in Georgia, and we told them. Because they were all upset about the young man getting killed in Minnesota. Mm-hmm. I said, you have to change, not by rioting or marching. I said, you got to go vote. Mm. I said, that's the thing. And they was like, We know that. We don't know. You don't know it. That's how you change it. It's not about the big presidential, because that one's probably going to least affect you the most. It's about the local voting. You need to vote for judges, county commissioners, all these people that you put in power. You need to know who, because they're making everyday decisions on your life. How much your gas, how much, if they pick up your trash or not, they make those decisions. If your schools receive 1 cent tax, it's up to them. You have to go out and vote and decide how you want your community ran. And I think that's something, my wife and I, again, talk about is one of the weaknesses we see in schools we think that's been done on purpose is we're not teaching civics. A lot of the people that we see out there, do they know their basic civic rights? Are you voting? How do you make changes? And I think doing this, we need to study the civil rights movement a little bit more and realize they just wasn't marching. It was always a purpose behind it. They did it with a purpose to get something. Now we think, well, we can do this. We have these rights. I can go buy anything I want. No, but it's a lot of laws and things are being changed and you don't even know it. So.
I think that is something that's so important. And one of the things that is really disheartening to me is the lack of people who vote. I think the statistics are that, maybe 50 or 60% of the registered voters get out and vote for the big elections, the big presidential elections. I think around Boston for, local election when it's the mayor or city council, you might have 25 to 30% of the registered voters, which is, again, just a slice of the people who could be voting because so many people don't even register. That's a real problem. You said you think that it was intentional that the folks stopped teaching this. What would be the reason for? Because I agree with you. I just don't get why you'd stop teaching that to kids.
I think that because if they don't know, they won't go and vote, and the people that do vote can change things the way they want to.
Okay.
I think about the elections. Why in certain countries it's held over 3 days, and to me that makes better sense. Because everybody, that means you can get off. A lot of times, I know certain elections. I know the presidential elections they close the schools, but then there's other elections. The schools are open, and if you're a teacher and you don't get off till 4:30,
right? You
got to drive and stand in line to go vote or go pick up your kids or whatever. You say, well, I'm just not going to vote today. Or if somebody's working. But if you make it over 3 days or if you make it on the weekend, think about how many people will vote then. Yeah. And if you had the polls, you set it up, people can vote Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We'll have a much larger turnout. You'll hear more voices. And I think one day in November, you don't hear a lot of voices.
Right. And I think it's hearing those voices that is going to make our country, our world better. The more input we have from more people, the better off we're going to be.
Yes.
Yeah. One of the things that has really become apparent to me, especially during this time of quarantine, my wife and I have been greatly blessed, and while it's been inconvenient, and my wife misses the fact that that she's not in her classroom teaching kids. She's not crazy about teaching kids through Zoom, although she does like the mute button. She does like the fact she wishes she had that in her classroom. And of course, I'm not able to get out and perform, and so that's something that I really miss. But otherwise, we have food and we have income coming in. But we've realized that we are really blessed, and we look back over, like, what would have, how would we have dealt with this 10 years ago, 15 years ago? It would have been a very different story. And I think one of the things that we're seeing is that we all might be going through this storm together, but we're not all in the same boat, and people are in very different circumstances. And I think that that's important for us to remember in life too. The life is very different for different people. Where I think our country is unique in that it is diverse, and not only diverse racially and ethnically and culturally, but the way we living in a big city like Boston or Atlanta and living in certain neighborhoods in those cities is very different than living in the suburbs or living in a rural community. And I think we forget about that. How do you think that there's a way that we can help our kids to appreciate the fact that we're not all in the same boat, that we don't all have the same life experiences?
I think I try to. I just wrote a blog about the virus knocking at our school door, and in that blog, I addressed the point of one time. One of my fellow coworkers, he was like, "I can't understand why my students won't do my homework. I put it online and they won't do it." And I had to tell them, hey, everybody don't live the way you live. Mm-hmm. And it shocked them. And I said, a lot of these kids don't have internet. Well, they have Jordans on and they have this and they have that. I said, somebody could have gave it to them. Mm-hmm. I said, or their parents just might value the wrong things.
Right.
I said, I want you to go around on the Sunday evening or on the weekends. See how many people or students are in the public libraries. How many people just go to Wendy's and sit and use the internet or coffee shops? Me and my wife let us go get ice cream on Sunday, and we sit there. We go to Dunkin' Donuts, and you just see people sitting in there using the free Wi-Fi.
Right. And
they don't have internet service at home. Or I remember when all this first happened, you saw the commercials of all the cable companies, everything. We'll give you free internet. No, what they don't tell you is if you owe me a balance, I can't give you internet.
Right.
You got to pay your balance first. Mm-hmm. And it might not be available in your area. Mm-hmm. So those kids just couldn't get it. They couldn't get while we were putting all these great lessons online, these kids had no access to it. Mm-hmm. So and I always tell them, I stand in front of my class like always, and say, hey, everybody don't live the same, mm-hmm. but just come in here and just try and give your best. In here, we're one team. But outside, we separate, and we go to different homes. Some homes, I remember one year, a little girl came to me and she was like, our lights are out. No, she said, well, it was the water, not lights. They didn't have water. And I offered the mom to pay the water bill. She was like, no, I have it by the end of the week. But kids come to school and have to deal with those different problems. Right. But if they come in your classroom, you have to make them feel welcome. They come in there smiling and ready to go. But you have to let them know everybody is different. We're different, but when they come together, you have to be as one.
Mm-hmm. I like that. I love that. When we come together, we have to be one. Something to pray about. And as I was speaking to you beforehand, and again speaking with my daughter last night, a lot of these things that we're talking about, a lot of things that you and I have spoken about today, they're things that I was protesting when I was my daughter's age, when I was in my early 20s and in college, and noticing, at that time, because I didn't have anything else going on, I understood, oh yes, we have different circumstances. And then somehow when you come together and you're a dad and you're a family and you worry about paying the bills, and this one has to go to ballet and that one has to go to soccer, and you're going 18 different ways, I think we get distracted and we forget the fact that not everybody has the same life circumstances, and it's not fair, and we have to remember that, and we have to have empathy for that, and where we can, we have to help raise everybody up. Are there any, because you and I have been fighting for this for a long time, do you see hope?
Yes, and I pause because I have to remember there's always hope. But if there's hope, it has to come. I think I always talk about this triangle. I got it from a former administrator. If you form a triangle on your hands, on one part you have the students, the teacher. Well, you say the students, the parents, and the school. To me, education is our hope. That's the way we got to change this thing. But if one part of that triangle doesn't work, it falls apart. It has to be the school. The school has to do its part. The parents have to do their part, and the student. But if every one part decides, well, we're not gonna do it, then it falls apart. Education is the way we make a change in our society. And I think when you look at it, education is being attacked. Like I said, I feel like civics, the kids just blow over it now. They go through it, but they really don't understand it. I remember when we were in school, we had to go, we'll have elections. They would explain it to us. We had to go to the library and put our ballot inside a box. You feel a part of a process. And now the kids vote, and they vote for popularity. They don't even know why they're doing it. Who's the student council president? They have no idea. And you have to teach these things in school. So when they become adults, they know the importance of it. My one last reflection. I used to have a file cabinet, tall file cabinet in my class. I kept it, I think, for 3 years. And one of the activities that I did every year is, if your parents go vote and get a sticker, because in Georgia they give like a peace sticker, said that you voted. If you bring me that sticker, I give you 100 points. And over the years, it kept getting covered. And they kept asking why. I said, I really want, and if you go with your parents, and you get 2 stickers, I give you 200 points. Cause I wanted them to go see the process. Right. Or just bring me the sticker, and your parents would bug their parents. I really need that sticker, and I need you to go vote. And then I was doing my part as a teacher, influencing their homes on making the parents say, okay, I got to go vote because my child really bugging me and I don't know why. Or my child wants to go vote with me. And even now, we used to take our kids to go vote when they were growing up. So they know the whole process. They know how to do everything. I think if more and more parents do that, we can change this world. Yeah. And that's our hope.
Well, I join you in that hope. I remember very well taking my kids to vote with me. I think it's so important, and I'm happy that you have hope. Because I have hope, but everybody accuses me of being that annoying glass is always half full guy. So I know sometimes I'm not always looking at things realistically, but I'm happy that you're hopeful, and I'm really praying that the world that our kids and our grandkids and our great grandkids are going to live in is a more just and equitable world, and a place where everybody feels loved and valued. And I'm so honored that you and I have become friends over the years through this podcast, because I think that you're a tremendous educator, and you've made a huge difference in so many lives. So I want to thank you for that, and I really want to thank you for coming on and sharing your thoughts on this. It's not easy. It's hard. But I think if the only way we're going to move forward, and the only way we're going to make that hope come true, is if we're willing to take chances and work together.
I agree.
Yeah. We've had a wonderful time speaking with a real great friend of the show, Dr. Terance Shipman. Dr. Terance, thanks so much again for being with us.
Thank you.
Please be sure to join us for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Donna Sager-Cohen. She'll be here to tell us about the latest addition to her Superhero School series. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so very wonderful. Of course, we want to thank our guest, Dr. Terance Shipman. Please be sure to check out his Kindergarten Chronicles. I also want to thank my incredible team, starting with my producer, Fatima Khan, my author ambassador, Peggy Cotto. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me, but most of all, I want to thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much for being committed to build a better world for all of our kids. A world where everybody will be judged by the content of their character. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.